Ladies and gentlemen, my apologies for being a few minutes late. I'll give Mr. Gorman a chance to get up here. Okay. I had to change clothes as always for one of these sessions. So thank you for being here. This is our third town hall in regarding Pinney Pool. For those of you who happen to be on social media, I might have let a little bit of the cat out of the bag earlier today, just to letting people get some sneak peeks at what we're hoping to do here this evening. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being a part of these continuing sessions. We're very excited to be able to show where we're at. Scott, I'm going to leave it to you, and I will let you proceed with Town Hall number 3.
There we go. Now it's working.
Perfect.
All right. Well, welcome. How come you're sitting way back there? You were the troublemaker last time. Yeah. Oh, true. All right. Well, wanted to get you a quick update on where we are. As you know, there are a number of things that go on behind the scenes. Since our last meeting, we've had our survey completed, which is great. We have the soils report underway, soils investigation, so we can determine what foundations can be built, et cetera. In the meantime, we've been working on refining the plans as we discussed at our last meeting. So I thought I'd just sort of step you through this as we go forward here. Let's see if it's working. Is there an on button here? It says on.
John, can you move the slide forward, please?
All right. So this is the lovely existing conditions right now. This building is the original one that we'll be taking down primarily because A, it won't be able to handle any of the new equipment needs. Secondly, there's more functions that are going to take place, such as a community room and so forth, and enlarged locker rooms, as an example. So, plus this will allow us to have sort of a clean slate. We'll take out the old pool, et cetera. Can we move it on one more? And this is what we think it's going to look like when it gets rebuilt. Now, I realize, and I love renderers for this, they put Porsches in there and so forth. But the idea is to have a sort of a screen wall that you see there, using the massing of the equipment room, which is the large gray form in the back, and then having this very transparent open front entry that's a little bit protected from the winds that come in from the southwest, but clearly allows you to see directly in, kind of becomes an identifier to those coming to the property. So the idea is to have a few glass blocks in this wall to sort of simulate the ability of bubbles and so forth, but they'll be clear so you can see through in various locations. But it also acts as a wind wall because above that you will see a roof line. That roof line theoretically will have solar panels on it so that we can start to generate some of our own electricity. And I know that the city has an application pending with Southern California Edison for potential solar voltaics on the property. So this is sort of what you're going to see as you enter. The large sort of red component in the back will probably have like a scoreboard or something like that on there, but we have some options as to where we might want to place that. Shall we go to the next slide? So this just sort of gives you a bigger picture of the property with the competition pool that we've talked about, that's number 3, the therapy pool, that's number 5, the waiting or community pool, number 4. And if you recall, you asked that we move those around a little bit in our last meeting that we had, so that there was a clear sight line. It sort of rearranges spaces, puts more space down where we see 9, which could be for picnicking and that sort of thing in close proximity to the pools. So it kind of gives you an idea of how the space will lay out. The dark blue elements are locations that we can put solar voltaics. Some of them might be over the parking area, some of them in the aforementioned front entry. The third might be in this pergola that goes and divides the competition pool area from the more recreational pools. And then the idea is that we have one big building that has and we'll get to that in a moment, that has all of the main functions. The secondary building, number 2, has both storage for equipment, the lane lines and all of the things that go on the surface of the pools, and some additional restrooms that are in close proximity to the therapy and the community pool, which was something that was suggested at the last meeting. So just to give you perspective, these were the size of the pools that we were talking about. Typically an 8-lane pool with additional warm-up lanes. It'll be deep enough for 1 meter diving plus water polo as well. There'll be an entry point that allow easy access in by steps. We'll also have a lift as required. The secondary, the children's pool, is about 3,000 square feet. That'll be kept fairly shallow, obviously, for obvious reasons. And then the therapy pool, which we've talked about, which will have the warmer water for therapy things going forward. Yes?
Could you define fairly shallow?
It could go anywhere from about 6 inches to probably 18 inches, depending upon.
Really shallow?
Yes, and it may be a little deeper than that, but the idea is that that's the children's play area to some extent. They'll be deep enough maybe to do some smaller exercise activities, but we don't anticipate it being anything more than about 3 feet deep at the deepest. So the idea is to have an area that will be accessible to the children. Obviously, you'll have lifeguards, that sort of thing. Whereas the therapy pool and competition pools might be used for, obviously, swim meets and practice. And the therapy might be for water aerobics, where that water might be like 90 degrees. All right, moving on. Can we go to the next slide? So this kind of gives you an idea of the overall building as we know it today. The idea is to have a clear entry point, which is what we spoke about up front. That's up on the left-hand side, of sort of a check-in desk. But we're also making sure that administration can see directly back into all the pool areas. So you'll have glass walls on that side where number 2 is, which is the administrator's office. Going a little further up, there's space for like trophy cases and so forth in that area, maybe a small waiting area or whatever that we might need, some seating. Going into area 4, that's the aforementioned equipment room for all the pool equipment that will run all the pools. We don't have a final layout on the equipment yet, but if you recall, we talked about having a roll-up door, having that thing sealed for any spills, et cetera. So that's all being incorporated at this point in time. 5 is the first aid room that we've talked about, that we can take people out and bandage them up if they scrape a knee or something like that. 6 are some, what I'll call sort of staff-related restrooms with a individual shower in each one. So the lifeguards can use that if they wanted to, or staff, if they've got other needs, they can use those restrooms. Further down, 7 is a what I'll call a staff or a lounge where the lifeguards and or let's say the judges for a meet might go to take a break. 8 is a custodial closet. 9 is mechanical closet. We'll ultimately need to have HVAC systems and so forth. 10 are what we'll call men's and women's restrooms and locker rooms. This is a preliminary layout. We'll need a little bit of feedback as to whether we have enough, too much. But we do have a fixture count that we have to hit that's based on the pool sizes. So it's kind of interesting. So going further, 11 is a concession stand that would open to the outside, but also work in conjunction with the adjacent kitchen that would serve the community room at 13. And then 12 are some additional restrooms that would be available to the community room. So let's say you're having a party or you were getting together for, a meeting maybe for this group tonight. Might want to meet out there sometime. Who knows? And then the back end of 13, the community room, has a series of sliding doors that can open up to the outside to a larger patio area. 15 is the standalone building that has some individual restrooms so that a family member or child can quickly run there rather than all the way back to the main building, and storage for the pool equipment. So that kind of gives you a big overview of that. We'd like to cut that number down. It's right around 7,700 right now. I think we can get it closer to 7,000, which I think would be the ideal sort of number, but 3 areas that are still to be determined. Whether we can cut down the locker room area a little bit, what the final equipment will be, that'll determine how we handle stuff. The black outline that you see right now, the dotted line, that is sort of the building overhangs. So we'll have a large overhang towards the pool area there. And of course, we showed you the sort of overhang at the front entry. Let's go to the next slide, if we can. Oh, the other way, one more. So we started looking at materials, and we've been kind of fixated on using a concrete block as a primary material. First of all, it's readily available. Second of all, it's highly durable. We can get it in a multitude of colors. We can even get it in a glazed finish. So we might want to have like a dark blue someplace that, again, very durable materials, very workable, low maintenance. And then we show a type of glass block that might be incorporated in the wall sections. So we just had a little bit of fun. We were starting to look at some of the other colors that might work there. That kind of gives you just a general idea of where we're going. Ultimately, the roof types, depending upon what we're doing, I'd like to see standing seam metal roof as a preferred sort of 50-year roof that's very low maintenance. We'll probably have some flat roofs in a couple places where mechanical equipment will go. But overall, we want this building to be as clean and kind of refreshing as possible. Why don't we go to the last slide? So this just sort of gives you a quick picture of what we think it's going to look like. Now, don't pick on the trees. Our renderer had some fun, and suddenly you now have, it almost looks like we're in the Midwest. We will have some trees around it, not to take away from that, but I think we'll have to take this down a few notches. But I think you can sort of see the representation of, in the relationship of all the pools, the covered areas, and I think this is going to end up being a really spectacular addition to the community. So with that, I will open it up for questions and comments. And yes, you did leak it out. I know you did.
But I did it, only like about 4 hours.
I know, I did that on purpose too. I knew you. All right.
It's one of the risks with me.
Yes.
Get an excited person. They're going to share information. Take it from the public first.
Yes.
You say community pool and therapy pool, those are the same, I'm assuming?
Well,
You
yep.
have 3 pools then.
We have 3 pools,
Competition?
a community, a child's or waiting pool, and a therapy pool. So
Okay, you used the word community several times.
I think of those as sort of more when I think of community, those sort of non-competitive pool elements.
Okay.
Does
So
that make sense?
community and therapy are,
Yeah, and that's why
One thing.
they're sort of
Okay.
sectioned off to that location.
okay.
Other questions? Yes, over here.
I apologize, I wasn't here at the last meeting, I was out of town. I did make the first one. So we are or are not having diving boards or any type of water features?
We will have, right now, we're anticipating a 1-meter diving board.
I'm talking just a springboard type thing?
Just a springboard, yes.
Okay.
And that's primarily for competition pieces based on what we know about the various competitive needs. It doesn't have to be there, it can be removed, but we're going to make it deep enough for you. It also is going to be deep enough for water polo. So we have to have a minimum of like 7.5 feet
Right.
for water polo.
Okay, and then, like, is there going to be any slides, water
So,
slides or anything like that?
Not
or-
permanent. What we've talked about previously are some inflatable elements, and we showed those early on that could be removed, like a climbing piece where if you climb in, it'll be moored in the pool, so if you fall off into the water. But these are things that could be taken out and put back in based on what the needs are. So if, let's say we're not doing lap swimming for the sake of argument, and it's Saturday, and we can put some of these inflatable elements out in the water for general community use. So those are anticipated as something, and they would be stored away in that storage room that we have with the lane lines when they're not in place.
And then I have one more.
Sure.
So you talk about the children's pool. That's a large children's pool if it's only going to go from like 18 up to 18 inches.
It may be deeper than that, but yes.
Because that's a large area that
Right.
it just, yeah, seems like if you're talking like a kiddie pool so that you can have infants and stuff like that playing in it, that's a large area.
I'm not sure we're going to have infants.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean,
but
people
you're-
put their infants in there. When I
Yeah.
say infants, that's anybody,
Right.
you know,
And this
to
is
18 months
based
old.
on what aquatic design has done in the past. They feel that this is about the right size pool for, and from the feedback that we got, that they wanted something like that. So the therapy pool's a little bit smaller, but it's also a little deeper for, let's say, adult use, doing water aerobics, things like that.
So is that the therapy pool going to be open for regular swim also?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
It's really.
I was just thinking that seems like, you know, we got a lot of kids in this area, and if they're going to be stuck, you know, anyway, I'm just
Yeah.
looking at the sizes.
Yeah, one of the things with the thing in mind that the competition pool would be for older kids, and that's where we've talked about like some of the water features and those things is, and I was shocked when they first started talking to me about it, because I was on the slide bandwagon. I've got 4 small kids. I wanted to. In the competition pool, what they do is I wanted to give you a little more detail. Think of it like, you know, if you've seen an inflatable bounce house with the slides attached to it or something to that effect.
No, I know what they are.
Oh, okay. And that's what the older kids would have as an area, and then the younger kids for the children's area, the children's play area for that, you know, 6 and below.
For adults too.
Oh, yeah.
No, and one of the things we've got, as you can see, is a fair amount of space around the pool for lounging and so forth. Plus, on the far side over by the wading pool and the therapy pool, there's a large area sort of in the northeast corner that we've left open that might have some shade structures and so forth in place. So the idea is that may be more of the family area for younger children. Larger children might use the bigger pool when it's not being used for swim practice or something like that. And we'll have to go through and sort of select different potential inflatables, because there's a wide variety of them. Yes.
Okay, one other comment, and I promise you guys, I'll let you have your turn. So the other thing I thought of, former lifeguard here, sorry, former
Yeah.
lifeguard, water safety instructor. I'm looking at this going, okay, I'm bringing my kids. I've got my 10-year-old that can swim well, but I've got my 3-year-old I'm going to have in here. It's going to be really difficult to keep track of your kids with that design.
Well,
And
we actually
it's just
moved-
something I thought of.
Yeah,
So,
we actually
you know,
moved
I'm sure
around
you
big-
addressed that.
Well, obviously, number one, we'll have lifeguards, so that'll be important. Number two, yeah. Number two, when we did this, we actually had a meeting 3 weeks ago, I think, and so there was some feedback. Hey, can you move the pools in this direction? So we're sort of, listening to what staff was saying as to how they may better observe what's going on. So we're looking at it from a staff, observation, which includes the lifeguards, but also the administrative staff. And the challenge, of course, is if you have a 4-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 15-year-old, they're all probably going to be in different locations, unfortunately, depending upon what mom and dad allow. So that's going to be your challenge as the mom or dad.
That's the lifeguard's challenge.
True.
Because what the parents do is they drop them off, and you're the babysitter the whole time. Speaking from experience, they drop them off when it opens, and they pick them up when it closes.
Yeah. Other comments? Yes, over here.
Talk a little bit more about landscaping and grassed areas and such.
You didn't like the trees? The trees are, that's what
Those
we're gonna
came
have.
from Modesto.
Yeah. So the intent is, obviously, there's some area up on the northwest corner that will remain for future development, but there are some grass areas up there. There are some trees. It's over towards the Seniors Community Center. What we see on the sort of northwest corner, I think if you see it, it sort of shows as yellow right now. I don't know if you can see that. There are suggested sort of fabric shade structures in that corner. That might be a grassy area with some places for picnicking and that sort of thing. And then, obviously, there's a lot of deck area around here where you could have lounge chairs, that sort of thing that could be set up. We just didn't want to clutter the rendering up with a whole bunch of umbrellas or pop-ups, that sort of thing. But there is a fair amount of space. If we can go back maybe a couple of slides to the site plan, that might show you where some of that occurs. Now, the 3 triangles down there just sort of give a suggestion of where that is sort of a wide open area. But we also have area closer to the main building. There's a large area, partly because when we do competitions, that would be the starting block side. On the left-hand side where you see 6, we anticipate that there could be bleachers there underneath that voltaic array. So it's shaded, but it could also be rolled away. Those can be portable bleachers. So we've tried to have as much room around each of the pools, both hardscape and, in the case of the northwest corner, more softscape, and then in the northeast corner, possibly some more softscape. And our landscape architect will work with us around the perimeter. One of the things we have to be careful about, though, is not having a lot of trees in close proximity to the pools because it clogs up the filter systems. And we're using the buildings, as you recall, as a windbreak. So to the extent that we will have trees like the forest that I showed you in the rendering, it'll be probably more desert appropriate, shall we say, but we should have some trees out there.
Growing up here and remembering the fun times around the pool, deck is really hot. Grass is really nice to lay on, even if it's a little ways from the pool. But much rather have grass than lots and lots of sun-reflecting deck.
Good point.
Did you hear it?
I heard it.
Okay.
Yeah. Other comments or suggestions? Yes, there's one over here.
Here goes.
Discussed the depth of the starting block area.
Right.
And we talked about it settling down to 3.6. Well, I did some research on the internet, and almost all of the national organizations now are recommending 4 feet or more. That's the future.
Actually, it's deeper than that.
Yes.
It's, so where you see the starting blocks, which would probably
Well,
be
I
on
don't
the
know. You're
east
saying,
and west
you're
side.
saying you're going to have 7 feet for water polo.
No,
So you've got a
it's-
lot of room to determine how to get to the starting block.
Well, if you consider each end of the pool, it's basically, the main part of that pool is going to be at least 7 feet deep. It's going to be deeper where we have a diving board,
Yeah.
okay? What I would say is the far right side of this pool would have a couple of practice lanes or warm-up lanes, but the 8 main lanes are going to have the much deeper area, partly because it'll be easier to slope everything for water polo down to the 7+
When
feet.
swimmers turn, they do that flip turn or whatever.
Well, both ends of the pool are going to be at least 7+ or more
Oh,
deep.
Fantastic. That's
Yeah.
just fantastic.
The only place you're going to see the 3.5 feet is at the walk-in area,
Yeah.
and then it'll slope. Those practice lanes might be shallower, but they're
Much
not diving
better.
at that point. And then when you get to the 8 lanes, you'll have the deeper area, partly because the water polo area is almost in the same location.
Okay, the second question I had has to do with the new standards that they're using for the construction of the pools. They're using U-shaped gutters on the edges.
Oh, yeah, you're talking about, and we actually did that at the '84 Olympic Swim Complex.
That's right.
They're very large,
Yes.
and the purpose of those is to take the wave action off as
right.
quickly as possible.
That's right.
So there's been several updates to that. So when you do that, it makes the pool faster
Yes.
for swimming because it takes more of the wave element that becomes, it reduces the choppiness of the thing. Almost all modern competitive pools are now built to those standards.
Oh, fantastic. Good here.
Yes, other comments? It's good to see all these people here. Either that or we've stunned them. Up front here, I know you all were making comments. How does this look to you? Starting to take shape?
Don't worry, we'll go right back.
We attended a few swim meets this past year in Victorville, Adelanto area, and noticed that there were some of the ladder placements were difficult for even competitive swimmers to exit the pool. Had to have assistance to get out. So just be aware of that. And being out here with the water issues we have, I'm sure you have some sort of water reclamation as people get out of the water. They're taking a lot of water out with them. So I'd hope that would be their, yeah.
And we have a lot of evaporation that occurs. So one of the things we anticipate having are pool covers that can be put out in the evenings.
Sure.
So that's pretty standard. So we'll have pool covers as well. Reclamation is a challenge because you're right, water does dissipate pretty quickly. And we are in a water conservation mode right now in the state. But we're going to try to do everything we can to keep the water in the pool for as long as we can.
Scott.
Another question over here.
Okay.
Actually, two questions. It's a
Yes.
functional, both are functional questions of
Yes.
how to use the pool. The gutter trigger, a question of, are we having the flush gutters, that is the modern wave dissipation, or are they actually going to be a vertical with a more standard gutter?
So I'm going to have to defer to Dennis, who's not here tonight,
Okay.
to help, but we can bring that detailing back to you at a later date. That's very easy to as we get further into the design of the pool. Both have their merits, but I think it really depends on kind of the preference that the city wants in terms of long-term maintenance. There's pluses and minuses to both.
Okay. And then this is planned to be a year-round pool.
Yes.
And there's lots of wind, lots of evaporation, lots of cooling as a result. So as we go through the design, I guess I came in late. Are you in the schematic design phase or the design development phase?
We're at design development now.
Okay, so it's critical now that you're starting to think of some of these functional aspects. The cover needs to be really easy to put on. So features can't be in the way of getting the cover. So that needs to be thought through because the cover needs to be put on probably every night, especially when we're in the
Right.
springtime with lots of winds.
And those are motorized reels that we have. These covers are pretty heavy, and they're typically about 8 foot in width, depending upon the material. So they are heavy, and for a reason. Obviously, they have as a thick insulation blanket. And yes, that's a maintenance thing that will have to occur. We anticipate, and you bring up the wind. One of the reasons we've set the building where it is, because the wind comes out of the southwest pretty regularly. We want the building to be as much of a mass to block the wind. It's not going to stop it, but it's going to make the space much more palatable on high wind days.
Yeah, to maintain the pool temperature throughout the year, the pool cover is going to probably go on every night during the winter, during the spring, during the fall. So just thinking through the logistics of how that's going to happen and make sure the design is compatible with that
Right.
function.
And we've talked about that, and we know that's why we have an extra storage room for that, because those reels are large, and they're wheeled in and out every day. We do it on the high school pools now, all over the place. I live near Pasadena's aquatic center. They take them off every morning at 5 o'clock in the morning, and they're heavy, and they have 2 competition pools.
I just wanted to clarify a point as far as year-round. I don't know that the council has quite bought into a 12-month year-round schedule. I believe we're looking closer to like a 9 to 10-month schedule, depending on how winter affects certain things, okay? And we're looking at it. I'm just saying, we haven't made a clarifying, because one of the big questions would be staffing for a year-round. Just to make sure that I don't want you to have a misleading direction.
Yeah, I'd like to comment on that if you could.
Sure, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, just to keep the flow of the discussion, a year-round pool for swimmers in a very large community is usually a must-have, and so I'd like to figure out how we can support that as a community, especially with the new tax increases.
Exactly. Yeah, I just wanted to be clear that we've as we're getting closer and closer, we're starting to think about how we're going to staff and certain things to that effect.
And
So,
I want to say you already started thinking about your overall staffing needs from an administrative and custodial needs, so that's already being considered. That's why some of these spaces are already developed in the plans at this point.
So I need to step back just a little bit because he, talked about the heat and the having to move the things. Understand that when you guys are looking at those things, don't trust that the manufacturer says is going to work for the heat in this area. Also being a pool owner that tells you that you got a 5-year solar blanket, we all know you're going to get 1 year out of it. You're lucky if you get 2. So when you're doing your planning, when you're covering your pool, even your automatic ones, or if you're reeling them yourself, any of that equipment's going to have to be able to handle our heat and our dry. And you can't trust what the manufacturers say.
No, you're correct. I mean, I think one of the things that I take solace in is Aquatics Design Group has been doing hundreds of pools, not just 1 or 2. They're all over the world, all over the United States, and an awful lot in California, and a lot of them in the desert. So I think at a later date we'll walk through all of the equipment specifically. I know you've already had some thoughts about it, but we'll start to look at these and bring back, here's one model of this, here's another model of this, so that they can make an informed decision. Each has a price point too. That's an important factor. And we don't have an unlimited budget. At least that's what you told me, so. Other comments?
Standard sunshades are going to be falling in the same limited warranty problem. They don't last out.
And we may do them in metal. It may be easier to do that, but we can still make them bright colors, so. All right, yes.
In one of your opening view graphs, you showed the street.
I'm not sure we can hear you.
Did the microphone get turned off?
I got it upside down. The street that runs, I guess, close to on
Warner.
On the
Warner, yes.
Now you showed the street running there, and you showed a crosswalk right there.
Yeah, let's go to the rendering real quick. Yeah, that was
Yes.
intended, that was something that the city has asked that we have a crosswalk, or they intend to have a crosswalk back over to the park.
Will there be access through there?
So if you see the location, you see where the yellow car is, there is a secondary entrance there.
So if you have a stamp or something, you can walk back across to get camping over here in the park?
Well, again, one of the things that we're working on is we're looking at trying to make sure that when we put Pinney Pool in and the other proposed ideas we have for Freedom Park, is that we make it a conducive entire complex when necessary. And so one of the things that we're looking at is how can we potentially be able to shut Warner down for these type of events so that we can allow for children and people to move back and forth safely. What could we do in terms of providing a signal crosswalk that we want to make sure that we've addressed community safety moving back and forth across from Freedom Park to Pinney Pool and vice versa, especially during our summer months or during events or during specialized things. Because one of the things we know is, we have one of the things that we went back and forth on was parking.
Yes.
It's because I don't want to add more parking. I want to keep parking at the building as limited as possible because we have this entire overflow called the Kerr-McGee parking lot that is, a whopping 30 yards of walking to the facility, and we can keep, disabled and handicap and all the other things that we need to do by code at the building, and we have overflow at Kerr-McGee. But we want to make sure that it's safe to move between the two for events and things like that. So we put that second, I guess I'm calling it like the summertime entrance.
Yeah, the secondary entrance.
It's a secondary entrance as demand would require it.
I can attest to how important that little park was for some of the swimmings that we've put on in the past. They use that more than they'd use the area that was available in the pool area, because it just wasn't big enough, and the kids can straight out, throw their blankets or whatever, their little tents.
Yep.
And that was really helpful. So I appreciate what you're trying to do.
1, 2, 3. Wait, behind you. We'll get a
Could you
microphone
please
to you.
explain the schedule completion on this project? Because I hear different dates, or when you're going to be done with finishing design, when you're going to start the work, because I don't know anything about it. So what is your deadline?
Who wants to answer this first, you or me?
Go ahead. Fire
Okay.
away.
It is the intent of your council to ensure that it is open by the summer of 2025. In order to achieve that goal, We are hopeful to be breaking ground by the late winter of this year, early winter of next year. So somewhere between the December, January, February bandwidth is when we intend to be breaking ground on the facility. I don't believe demolition would start any earlier than that. It might not. It depends on how projects are moving forward. And then a year of construction time estimated to a late spring, early summer opening in 2025 is our intention. We believe that and I'm not trying to be political here. I'm trying to be honest. We told everybody in this community, please get behind us, put your support in us to make sure we deliver this. If we don't deliver it, you should throw us out next November. But I don't believe that you're going to have any cause to, because we're going to make that deadline.
And maybe to answer a more detailed piece, so some things occur that are in the background that are already happening. For instance, we have the survey already done. We have the geotechnical report already going on. Our civil engineers and aquatic design group, the pool designers, are now, laying out the specific dimensions, although we have that, but I mean, you have to get much more detailed for construction documents. And then we still have to go through a building department review, that'll either be Kern County or internal. That may take, probably 90 days from start to finish. We also have the health department that we have to go through. All of these we've built into the planning process. We have to go through and competitively bid this project. So there's several steps, but tonight is sort of like the starting point for the next step, which would be, unless we get some major changes in what we've shown you, we would now start putting together the construction documents for plan review. So that takes some time, and we anticipate it'll probably take about 90 days to get to that point, some 90 days for the plan review. Concurrently, we may do some demolition, or we may wait and do it all at once, and we'll come back and have probably other update meetings with this group just to kind of let you know where we're at. But after this point, it's more sort of the legs going underneath the water, churning away while we get the plans in place. And trust me, we'll probably have 150 pages of plans plus about 500 pages of specifications to bid on, so. Okay, now going to the center here.
I have a question regarding the two entrances. What is the benefit of having two entrances?
Okay, so the primary entrance, which we showed you at the front of the building, would be probably the everyday kind of entrance that would occur, let's say, for, I would say, non-summer activities. Like, we might still have, I think we've talked about the competition pool being open more likely, if not year-round, much of the year for competition. Same thing possibly with the therapy pool. You want them to sort of check in through that front entry. I don't know that you've worked through all the machinations, but there's probably some sort of subscription service or something that determines, how things are used. The secondary entrance is really, as we discussed, maybe for the summertime use, or when we have, let's say, a large swim meet where we have multiple teams and they may not all fit in this space, but they may need to have pop-up tents over in Freedom Park, that sort of thing. So the idea was to have some flow through there. We also wanted it to be very visible from Warner as well. So we wanted to have the buildings at the back end to block the wind, the front end to be very visible. But if we needed a secondary entrance when we have a high volume use, we have it set up. Does that help you?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay. I think up front here.
So what is the estimated
Wait, hold
cost
on,
of this?
Jessica.
Hold up.
What is the estimated cost at this point?
So our all-in budget is somewhere between 12 and 13 million. That's what we've been directed to come up with. That's inclusive of construction. That's the soft costs like the surveys, architect's fees, things like that, plan check fees. That's our limit.
So that's the same that you kind of had this
Yep.
whole
I mean, frankly, we've had a larger increase in the building. That's why I want to kind of shrink that back down, because that's a cost. And if we can bring that back down, that's going to save some money. We think the pools right now alone, just the pools, are about $3.5 million for construction based on what Aquatic Design has told us. The building's a little bit in flux because the functions and scope has changed a little bit from what we started with. That's why I want to keep that as tight as possible. But the idea is that probably hard costs are right around 11.5, 12 million, and then $1 million for all the soft costs, which I think we've kind of stayed true in our conversations from the get-go on that.
Yeah,
So,
for the most part.
and I think that actually even showed up in your preliminary reports from a couple of years ago.
Yeah, from our budgeting, from the time we started the conversation, we've stuck pretty much to those same budget numbers.
Yeah, our biggest challenge is construction costs have risen probably since those numbers were there a couple of years ago. And COVID, I hate to say COVID, but it has dramatically affected material costs. Yes.
This is really for the mayor and the council. Will there be memberships? It really can't be free.
It's not been defined yet. How about that? I would be speaking very much out of any place in terms of the council as a whole. I know there's been conversations about, do we separate city versus county residents? Do we separate based on sales tax? Do we, and property tax, do we have annual subscription versus daily subscription? Do we have summertime versus year round? So I think it's been bounced back, but I don't think there's anything that's been solidly, this is the direction we're going, because right now our focus is on getting shovel in ground, because then we'll have 12 months while it's being built to sort out exactly how we want to manage and offset. Because one of the simple facts is pools historically will never ever be offset by their usage fees. It's in every study that you look at for a pool, it's impossible. The simple fact is that the bulk of the maintenance and use is operated off of taxpayer funds. It's making sure that we have a balance between how it's being used in terms of what the expectations are. So if we go to a year-round, what's it going to cost for us to maintain year-round staffing? If we go to just a summer availability, can we minimize that to a lowest point for maximum access during the warmest months, things like that. So nothing's in stone yet. And we would welcome, first and foremost, if you have a suggestion, if you really think, hey, I think personally that anybody who's not in the 93555, 93562 zip code should pay, 3 times what I pay, then tell me that. I'm open to hear.
Yes.
Follow on to a previous discussion, probably during your schematic design phase. And I think you mentioned that you were having the Colorado timing system integrated into your design, as well as the equipment and the scoreboards.
Yes.
That hasn't been value engineered out, has it?
No.
Great.
And
the
obviously, that's like all the other equipment that we're going to have. We're going to have to bring all that to staff's review so they know exactly what they're buying. But things like the scoreboard, we want to build that into the building itself, hang it up on the sidewall. All of the timing equipment, obviously the conduit and so forth will be put in. But remember, you remove the touch pads and so forth when they're not in use.
Yeah, that's great, because CIF has now mandated that the Colorado timing system is required.
Yeah.
Otherwise, their score does not count. So I'm really glad that that has been part of the design package. One comment back to the mayor is we cannot rely on NAS providing year-round pool support. That's not available to us right now, or the community. So really pushing toward a year-round pool is super important, especially if you have to, even if you have to scale it down just to the competition pool and possibly the therapeutic pool. Now you have minimal staff, but now you're really giving back to the community. And swim team has generated, as you know, really good swimmers. It's a really good sport. Everybody participates and is rewarded. And the kids that swim tend to be really strong too. So anyway, it'd be really nice to figure out how to fund a year-round pool.
I certainly tell you, we've heard it, we hope, and we're working towards those striving goals. I got to tell you, one of the things that I was telling somebody earlier today, the cool part is that Burroughs will have a home swim meet place for all their CIF in Ridgecrest, and they get the opportunity to add an entire other sport in water polo for the first time. We understand the value of what those types of meets and competitions and building a unique and well-managed professional facility will mean to bringing, not only just bringing value to our community, but also bringing economic value as well. So we definitely have been thinking of that ahead of time. The biggest concern is just how we balance the demand points November, December, January, February. That's the window that we're only worried about. We're 100% with you on all the others.
One of the benefits of figuring out how to do it year-round, even if it's a scaled-down approach, is the continuity. Most swim teams are year-round, even water polo teams are year-round. And if you have the continuity where you have the membership, now you're not figuring out how to regain that membership. So,
good point.
Other comments? Comments from our panel up there? Does this start to meet your expectations as we continue to get this to evolve? I'm not going to look at the mayor because I already know what his answer is. Oh, okay.
Okay, I noticed that this is strictly an open facility. When we first talked about it, I was pushing for an enclosed facility. You remember those discussions I had with you? Well, I'm wondering is this facility able to attach a balloon type enclosure?
No, I don't think that's really feasible at this point. Partly because A, those structures tend to fall apart after a while. B, I think it would really restrict visibility. I think we can do more with,
Not all season, but just during the winter.
I think that would be very difficult to put up and remove on a regular basis. And I don't think we really have a budget for something like that.
I'm not thinking of your budget, but it could be possible the city could raise that money somehow.
Yeah, if that's what they want to do, but I mean, that's a pretty big space to cover.
I've seen it done.
Oh, yeah, it's been done. It's just, they gave me only so much money.
Yeah, we only have so much money. I know that we've explored a lot of the especially the indoor aspects. I was an advocate for indoor over and over and over again, and I lost that battle and lie on the side of the road as a result of it. But that's fine. The simple fact is that every value engineered aspect that we can figure out, we're trying to make sure we are not going to exceed that budget, because there's two things that we promise as community, which is one, Measure P is renewable, and we hope to deliver everything that you guys are expected of it, and to make sure that we maintain that civic trust between the citizens and the community. And we have Measure V coming up. And so the fact is that we have to make sure that we keep this to its specified budget. If our city continues to grow and we have more opportunities, I'm sure we would continue to look at ways we can make this. That's one of the big reasons why, if you look, there's a big empty spot right up in the upper northeast corner.
Northwest.
Northwest
Yeah.
is where the empty spot is?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And I call it that, it's up where the trash is, but, we've left some space so that we can think about future expansion in terms of what we would want to do and how we could want to do it. Because if we are successful as a community and continuing to grow, and especially building more and more economics into the community, then we would love to be able to come back and look at other features that we can make it even more for the community. But I just don't see us finding an indoor solution right now that is cost effective to this budget to deliver what we need.
Other comments? So as we progress into the next phase, one of the things we'll be building in is some outside cost estimating to bring this forward. I know, Travis, you've already been giving some thoughts about specific pool equipment that you thought was important to have based on your past experience. And we can do a lot of estimating, but the best thing we can do is really get a contractor to give us a hard bid. And that's when the rubber meets the road. And the sooner we get out to bid, the better off we're going to be, because I don't see prices going down anytime soon, unfortunately. I think they'll slow down a little bit, but they're still rising.
Slowing and going down are two different things.
Well, true, but I mean, if you read Engineering News Record, that comes out regularly, the construction cost index is still up. And we're in a unique area, so we're talking about probably a small premium for building in this area. But at the end of the day, we've got a budget, we've got to hit it, so we're going to keep plowing away at it. And if we've got an issue, we're going to have a conversation about that well before we get to the bidding. We'll find the alternatives to make it happen, so. Other comments? Well, it's good to see you all out here, those of you that made it. Do we have anybody online tonight?
I'm not sure if, nope,
okay.
I apologize. One of the things that we've been striving to do, and I will mention it for the future, I don't know if the phone number is showing up on the YouTube, is it? Okay, great. And there's a caller. No. Oh, he's signaling to me. I'm officially now getting light signals.
That was Morse
Got
code.
it.
That was Morse code.
But one of the things we did is we added the phone number to the bottom of our YouTube presentation, and the MediaCom presentation, so the phone number was always up there, so that if they wanted to call in, people would have that opportunity. So,
All right.
I don't think there's anything else. See, now he's showing it to me. Thank you. Oh, and now I'm getting a phone call. There you go. So you asked for it. Here, caller, go ahead. Caller, go ahead. Caller, go ahead. Okay, caller, are you there? I said we're trying to put the phone number up. Just let me reiterate. Thank you guys for coming out. Thanks for everyone who's participating. We're working on the process. Okay, they're ready again. Caller, go ahead.
Yeah, I did have a question. I'm watching online, and so the diagrams are a bit small. Is there going to be a concession setup of some sort, especially when we have swim meets and stuff like that? Like, there are not a lot of restaurants in that area, and I feel like it would behoove us to have some kind of snack bar.
It's located, and these images will be up online here shortly. But
Look at that. Look at how good he's doing.
so, yeah, that's nice. This is my Vanna White here that's pointing. So we do have a snack bar that also functions internally for a serving kitchen for the community room. So it's
Okay.
So we'll have both, but yeah, it'll be like a pass-through window for snacks, hot dogs, ice cream, whatever you might sell there.
And then also because we're looking at the kitchen and banquet room in that. I'm just going to share to go one step further is, if there's food trucks that want to do a day and they want to set up, if there's we're leaving ourselves with the maximum flexibility to create the best complex for the community as possible.
Do we know how this will encroach upon the middle school? Because as of right now, as far as I'm aware, there's not another site for that school. So
it will encroach on the track.
Okay.
And my apologies to the school district, but that's our land and we fully intend to encroach on it.
Well, I'm more concerned about traffic-wise because that gets real backed up. And so I'm concerned traffic-wise in the springtime, like, March through May or June when school is still in session.
Yeah, I don't think it'll back up onto Warner to be any effect. We don't believe.
Okay.
But thank you. Great question.
Mm-hmm.
We got it.
Bring up ugly things, but there's a lot of flat spaces on the outside, and though we don't get it too much out here, we do get some tagging. Brick is kind of a hard thing to deal with when there's tagging, that you get the splotchy, ugly. I don't know if you talked about one that has like a
glaze.
A glaze on
Yeah.
it. I don't know if anybody's thought about, the extra cost for that as opposed to what the extra cost of perhaps painting over or maintaining and dealing with any tagging.
It's a great question. I promise you that we're thinking about it, and I'm going to tell you why. First, we know it's going to happen, but secondarily, we just put up brand new shade structures for our softball teams. And I'll let you guess what happened already. And I'm freely stating, anybody out there listening, if you're listening, you're paying attention, we're trying our very best to bring a great services, resources, to bring back that quality of life for our community. And that starts with making sure that these things are maintained. So I promise you, we're keeping that in mind. We're also looking at cameras on the property. We're also looking at Wi-Fi on the property. We're looking at making sure that it remains a safe facility and a clean facility and a professional facility. That's gonna be frustrating and it's gonna happen. And you know what? I will commend exactly what I've said so many times. You know, I can't stop it from happening, but I can handle my response to it. And just like when we had the firearm theft just this last week, or what was it, a week and a half ago, and that thing was recovered and the person arrested in under 24 hours because we had good cameras, we had good resources, and we are continuing to be the resilient Ridgecrest community we are. We're gonna do everything in our power to make sure that that's prevented, because I'm telling you, the amount of frustration I know this young lady and I just, when seeing that we just put something, that we just worked our happy smiles and bringing some to the community, and then seeing it tagged in the first 3 weeks, we were livid. I promise you, we're focused on it.
So the other thing we typically do, because I do a lot of schools, is whether we have brick or block, we have an anti-graffiti coating that we typically specify that is sprayed on. Now, it has to be updated regularly because it does break down in the sun over time, much like paint. It has to be done as a regular. That has a positive effect because it makes it a lot harder for paint to stick. But you do have to do it pretty regularly. We recommend about every 18 months if you have a large surface. And you'd be surprised when you have the right stuff, the paint runs straight down. It's very disillusioning to those that want to graffiti something.
And then I have a second question, and it's more for our representatives. And I missed the first two meetings, which I apologize for. The high school will be using this, correct?
I'm confident that the school district will seek a partnership agreement with us for the high school to use it.
And that was my next question is an income flow, will they be
I'm
leasing, renting?
I'm very confident that a partnership agreement that is similar to what existed prior to the closure of Pinney Pool,
Okay.
that existed between SSUSD, will be pursued with any groups that are looking to use the facility and use it in a consistent, an ongoing basis. Those conversations haven't happened with SSUSD, or there's a new superintendent. We're going to give her an opportunity to get her feet wet. But during that construction time, that absolutely will be surely discussed. Shirley? Get her feet wet? Yeah, I didn't think about that one. But I was just more being respectful. Anybody just in the new job, I want to give her time to understand everything before I go, hey, I got a bill coming up.
Well, thank you for the feedback. I appreciate it.
Scott.
We'll continue to work on this. We'll probably report back in about 30 days to staff. And then we'll probably have maybe another meeting this summer sometime as we make significant progress on the working documents themselves.
Yep. And just for everybody out there watching on the video, anybody who communicates with somebody else, we have put all of these materials online on our website. They are available. If you just scroll down to the graphic of a kid swimming in Sergeant John Pinney Pool, Memorial Pool, you can see these slides from this evening, as well as, I don't know if the previous slides are there as well. I believe they are. Just, again, transparency throughout this entire process. I want to thank my fellow council members. Mr. Gorman is here. I know Mr. Rajratnam left. Mr. Heyman is in the back. They can't talk because of Brown Act, but this entire council has been united on getting this moving forward. And Scott and Dennis and their teams have been working with us diligently. To the young lady who asked us, "Are we going to deliver?" We're going to deliver this. This is not a maybe anymore. This is, let's get it done. And I think we're moving full forward on that direction. So thank you guys for participating in the process. And if you'd like to share it with friends, family, loved ones, go to the website, grab it, share it as you like. Okay. Thank you.